Look at the moment. The ocean stops, behaving like an ocean. July 25th, 1946. Bikini Atoll. A nuclear bomb detonates underwater, about 90 feet down. And the sea doesn't splash. It stands up. A column of water, millions of tons, rises into the sky like a cathedral. Then it falls back down as radioactive rain. Battleships are crushed. Carriers are broken. Steel that survived World War II collapses in seconds. And when the water clears, when the lagoon becomes a graveyard, one ship is still floating. A dark silhouette. Not American. Japanese. Nagato. The flagship tied to the opening of the Pacific War. The ship that symbolized an empire's confidence, now reduced to a prisoner. The U.S. tried to kill her from the air. They tried to kill her from below. But she refused to sink. And the most haunting part, she didn't die on camera. She died later, quietly, when nobody was watching. So what really killed the ship that survived 2 atomic bombs? Tonight, on Strange Files of History. This is the last 4 days of the Battleship Nagato ended. But the war's biggest question didn't. If an atomic bomb hits a fleet at sea, does the fleet die instantly, or does it die slowly? In 1946, the United States decided to find out the only way militaries ever truly learn. They built a floating experiment, a target fleet nearly 100 ships anchored in a perfect pattern at Bikini Atoll. Battleships, carriers, cruisers, submarines, support ships, a diverse collection of naval power. Some were American legends. Some were captured trophies, German and Japanese steel, taken as souvenirs. And the test had a name that already sounded like a warning. Operation Crossroads. 2 detonations, 2 code names. Able, an airburst. Baker, an underwater detonation. But in the middle of this target fleet sat one ship with a different kind of gravity. Nagato. Before Yamato, this was the pride of Japan's battleship era. A symbol vessel, a flagship. And too many Americans, it wasn't just metal. It was personal. So they placed Nagato where it would hurt, near the center of the blast zone. Close enough that the blast should tear her apart. Close enough that the story should end fast. It didn't. Because an atomic bomb doesn't just test armor, it tests everything you can't see. July 1st, 1946. Test Able. A bomber releases the weapon from high altitude. In theory, it's a clean test-controlled geometry, clean math, tidy results. But war never respects tidy. The bomb doesn't land exactly where they want. The flash blooms in the sky, and for a split second, every ship in the lagoon becomes a photograph. Then the shockwave arrives, not like wine like a wall. You don't hear it first. You feel it. It hits superstructures. It tears antennas. It bends platforms. It strips paint like skin. Ships closer to the burst are torn open and set on fire. Others are shaken like toys. And she's close enough that you expect the story to end right here. But when the smoke thins, she's still floating. Scarred, yes, but the hull holds. The battleship doesn't list dramatically. It doesn't capsize for the camera. It just absorbs the punishment and stays alive. And that frustrates everyone watching, because Able reveals an uncomfortable truth. An airburst is devastating to crews, senses, exposed structures, but a heavily built battleship hull can survive the initial violence. So the planners decide, fine. If the sky won't kill her, we'll make the ocean do it. Because water doesn't carry shockwaves like air. Water carries them like a fist. July 25th, 1946. Test Baker. This time, there is no bomber overhead. No theatrical drop. The weapon is suspended underwater about 90 feet down beneath the target formation, and that changes everything. Because underwater, there's no room for pressure to escape. So when the device detonates, the ocean becomes a weapon. First comes the shockwave moving through water with brutal efficiency. It slams into holes from below, not like a punch, like the ground itself hitting you. Then the lagoon rises, A column of water erupts upward, towering, thick, heavy, carrying mud, coral, steel, fragments, and radioactive debris. Ships are lifted. Some are slammed back down. Some are crushed in place. And Nagato, she takes the hit where battleships fear it most. The keel, the underside, the spine. For a moment, the deck disappears behind the wall of water. Then the rain returns. Contaminated, relentless. Every surface becomes poison. Observers expect the silhouette to vanish. But when the water settles, Nagato is still there. Not intact, not proud, but afloat. Now she's listing. Damaged. Radioactive. A ship you can't safely board. A ship you can't celebrate sinking. And then something eerie happens. She doesn't sink immediately. She lingers. 4 days, floating in a contaminated lagoon like a stubborn ghost while newer ships, cleaner ships, better ships are already dead. And that is why Nagato becomes the centerpiece of Crossroads. Not because she was the strongest, but because she refuses to give them the ending they came for. And then 4 days later she dies. In a way that makes the entire test feel double wrong. Nagato survives the 2 blasts. That's the headline. But the story isn't 2 bombs, and she lived. The story is what happens after. Because after Baker, the lagoon isn't just a battlefield. It's a chemical and radiological trap. The ships are coated in contaminated water. That water gets into vents, into seams, into pipes. It soaks into places you can't scrub. And Nagato, now broken and irradiated, becomes untouchable. So here's the haunting part. Her final moments aren't a heroic last stand. They aren't filmed like a triumph. In fact, different reports and retellings disagree on the exact cause, because the environment itself makes clear observation difficult, but the pattern is consistent. Over days, she takes on water. Damage accumulates. Compartments that should isolate flooding don't. And on the night of July 29th, with no spectacle, no countdown, no perfect camera angle, Nagato finally rolls. Slowly, heavily, like a tired animal giving up, and she slips beneath the surface. By morning, she's gone. The ship that wouldn't die doesn't die in the blast. It dies later quietly, after everyone stops looking, which raises a darker question. If the bomb didn't kill her instantly, what did? Operation Crossroads didn't just test explosions, it revealed the real enemy. Contamination. Because after Baker, the lagoon becomes radioactive soup. Not metaphorically, literally. Water drenches decks, then evaporates, then leaves radioactive residue behind. Sailors try to clean ships with soap, lye, chemicals, but the counters keep screaming. Because radiation isn't dirt, it isn't a stain. It's inside the ship's body now, in ventilation, in piping, in build. So the Navy learns the terrifying conclusion. Even if a ship survives the blast, the crew cannot survive the aftermath. A nuclear strike doesn't just destroy ships, it turns them into floating hazards. And that is the moment battleship logic dies. Not because armor fails, but because armor can't block what you can't fight, and Nagato becomes the perfect symbol of that truth. A battleship strong enough to endure the blast, yet useless the moment the water turns hostile. So why did Nagato last longer than so many others? It wasn't magic. It was engineering. Battleships were overbuilt for a world where the threat was shells, torpedoes, surface combat, compartmentation, armor, redundancy. The old religion of steel, and in that religion, Nagato was a high priest. Even damaged, she could remain afloat longer than ships designed for different assumptions. But Crossroads didn't care about assumptions. It introduced a new god of warfare. One that doesn't duel you. One that simply changes the environment until survival is impossible. And that's why Nagato's survival is so disturbing. Because it proves something that sounds comforting, but isn't. A ship can survive the blast and still be dead. Today, Nagato lies upside down on the floor of Bikini Atoll. A wreck. A diving site. A tomb, not just for a ship, but for an ERA. In 1941, Nagato represented imperial certainty. In 1946, she became a measuring stick for the atomic age. The bomb didn't just sink. It sank the entire concept of winning a naval battle with armor and guns alone. Because in the atomic world, there is no such thing as a survivor ship. Only survivor silhouettes, and even they don't stay alive for long. So here's the question. If you had to take one vessel into a world where the ocean itself can turn radioactive, do you want the thick armor of a battleship? Or do you want the one thing Nagato never had? Distance. Tell me in the comments. And if you want more declassified stories from the atomic age, subscribe. Because the fallout is far from over.